My sister turned the whole family against me. The day she needed them most, they chose me. This is a story about a family dinner that lasted 4 hours and changed everything. It happened on a Saturday evening in April in the dining room of a house in Phoenix, Arizona, where the Calloway family had gathered for what was supposed to be a routine birthday celebration. 8 people around a table. Roast chicken. A store-bought cake with the wrong flavor of frosting because someone had forgotten to check. By the time the dinner ended, one person had confessed to something that rewrote 6 years of family history. One person had left before dessert and not come back. And one person, the one who had driven 2 hours to be there despite having no particular reason to expect the evening to go well, had finally been given back something that had been taken from her a very long time ago. Her name is Claire Calloway. She is 34 years old. She is a physical therapist in Tucson, Arizona. She has a rescue cat named Fig, a small apartment she has made exactly her own, and a family that spent 6 years believing a version of her that was not true. Her sister's name is Dana, and the man who told the truth was Dana's husband. Stay with me. Because what Marcus said at that dinner table is something the Calloway family will be talking about for the rest of their lives. Claire and Dana Calloway grew up in Phoenix in a family that placed enormous value on appearances. Their father, Richard, was a successful commercial real estate developer, not wealthy in the way that makes the news, but wealthy in the way that makes a neighborhood, the kind of comfortable prosperity that expresses itself in good schools and annual vacations, and the unspoken assumption that things will work out because they always have. Their mother, Patricia, was the social architect of the family, the one who managed relationships, maintained connections, organized the gatherings that kept everyone feeling like a unit. She had strong opinions about how the family appeared to the world and stronger opinions about the behavior of her daughters. Dana was 3 years older than Claire and had inherited their mother's social fluency. She was charming and quick and knew instinctively how to manage a room, how to make people feel included, how to deflect attention when needed, how to be exactly what each situation required. She was, by most external measures, the daughter the Calloway family was proudest of. Claire was quieter, more internal. She had the specific quality of people who observe carefully and speak precisely. She didn't say much, but what she said tended to be true. Her parents found this occasionally uncomfortable. Truthfulness in a family that valued appearances was not always an asset. The sisters were close through childhood and adolescence in the unexamined way of people who have grown up in the same house and don't yet know who they are outside of it. Not intimate exactly. Dana had always been the one with the social life, the friends, the plans, but present to each other in the way that siblings are present before adult life creates its own distances. The distance, when it came, was not gradual. It arrived all at once, in the specific form of a conversation Claire was not present for. In the spring of 6 years ago, Claire borrowed $4,000 from her parents to cover a gap between jobs. She had left a position at a rehabilitation clinic that was understaffing its therapists to the point of patient safety concerns and was between roles for 6 weeks. The loan was documented, an email from her father confirming the amount and the informal agreement to repay when she was settled. She repaid it in full 8 months later. What Claire did not know was that Dana had told their parents something different. The full picture of what Dana had said did not become clear to Claire until that Saturday dinner in April. What she experienced in the years between was the effect rather than the cause. A gradual cooling in her family's manner toward her that she could not explain and that shifted the ground under every interaction. Her father became less forthcoming. Conversations that used to range freely began to feel managed, as if he was being careful. Her mother started making small comments about responsibility, about making good decisions, about the importance of being reliable. That seemed to have no specific referent, but landed with the weight of something pointed. Family gatherings changed. Claire was included, but the inclusion had a quality to it, a slight formality, a watchfulness, that had not been there before. She began to feel, at her own family's table, like a guest who had done something to warrant monitoring, but had not been told what. She asked her mother directly, twice. Both times she received reassurances that everything was fine, delivered in a tone that communicated clearly that everything was not fine. She asked Dana once carefully whether she had said something to their parents. Dana looked at her with an expression of gentle concern and said, "Claire, why would I do that? I think you might be reading into things." Claire believed her, or tried to. Dana had always been better at this than she was, at the smooth delivery, the reasonable explanation, the version of events that made the questioner feel slightly foolish for asking. What Dana had actually told their parents 6 years ago and in various forms since, that Claire's job loss had not been voluntary, that she had been let go for performance issues, that the $4,000 loan was not the first time Claire had been financially irresponsible. Dana had heard from mutual contacts that Claire had debt she wasn't managing, that she was worried about her sister, that she was telling them because she thought they should know. None of it was true, not a single word. Claire had no performance issues. She had no unmanaged debt. She had left her job voluntarily for documented ethical reasons. She was, by any objective measure, a responsible adult, managing her life competently. But Dana had said it with the specific credibility of a concerned older sister, and their parents had received it with the specific credulity of people who already slightly preferred the version of their younger daughter that required watching over. For 6 years, Claire had been living inside a story she hadn't been told, and Dana had been living inside a family that trusted her completely, which suited her purposes perfectly. Stay with me, because Dana's purposes were more specific than anyone knew. Dana married Marcus Chen 3 years ago. He was a quiet, methodical man who worked in financial compliance, the kind of work that requires a tolerance for detail and a low threshold for irregularity. He had known the Calloway family for 2 years before the wedding and had formed, in that time, a private assessment of each of them that he kept largely to himself. His assessment of Dana was complicated. He loved her. He also, over the course of their marriage, became aware of things that were difficult to square with that love. The Calloway family operated a shared financial structure that was unusual for adult children, but not uncommon in families with Richard Calloway's background. A family account from which certain expenses were drawn, to which certain contributions were made, and which had operated on a combination of trust and informal accounting since the children were adults. Richard was the nominal manager. Patricia reviewed it occasionally. Dana, as the older child and the one who had always been more involved in family logistics, had been given access to facilitate payments and track contributions. Marcus was a financial compliance professional. He noticed things. Over 18 months, he noticed that certain withdrawals from the family account did not correspond to any documented family expense. Small amounts initially, a few $100s here, a transfer there, then larger, then patterned in a way that was unmistakable to someone trained to see patterns. He confronted Dana privately, twice. The first time she had an explanation. The second time the explanation contradicted the first. He told her she needed to stop and correct it. She told him he was misunderstanding the family's financial arrangement. He told her he wasn't. He spent 3 months deciding what to do. What finally decided him was not the money. It was something Dana said during one of their arguments about it. A comment, offhand, and then immediately retracted, about how her parents would believe her over Claire anyway because of Claire's history. Marcus had never understood the family's wariness about Claire. He had found her direct and reliable, and had privately thought the family's treatment of her was unfair without knowing why. That comment gave him the why. He called Claire 2 weeks before the April dinner. "There are things you need to know," he said, "about your sister and about what she's been telling your family." Type shocked in the comments, because Claire was. The April dinner was Richard Calloway's 65th birthday. The whole family was there. Richard, Patricia, Dana, Marcus, Claire, and several relatives who visited twice a year and had absorbed, without knowing its source, the family's ambient wariness about Claire. Claire had arrived knowing what Marcus had told her. She had spent 2 weeks deciding what to do with it, whether to address it privately, whether to involve her parents before the dinner, whether to let Marcus handle it in his own way and his own time. She had decided to wait, not because she was afraid, but because she had spent 6 years being managed, and she wanted, for once, to see the situation unfold on its own terms, rather than in a version that someone else controlled. The dinner was ordinary for its first 2 hours. Richard was in good spirits. Patricia had made his favorite food. Dana was, as always, the social engine of the gathering, directing conversation, drawing people in, performing the role of devoted older daughter with the ease of someone who has been doing it for decades. Marcus was quiet, quieter than usual, Claire noticed. He ate carefully and said little, and when Dana reached over to touch his arm during a story she was telling, his response was a fraction of a second too slow. The shift happened over dessert. Richard made a comment, innocuous, intended as affectionate, about how the family had always been able to rely on Dana to keep things together. He glanced at Claire with the specific expression she'd been receiving for 6 years. Not unkind, just careful. The expression of someone managing their expectations. Marcus set down his fork. "I need to say something," he said. The table went quiet in the way tables go quiet when someone's tone announces that what follows will not be casual. He was methodical. He had clearly prepared. He did not raise his voice. He presented what he had found in the family accounts, the amounts, the dates, the pattern, with the precision of someone who had spent his career presenting financial irregularities and knew that clarity was more devastating than drama. Then he turned to Dana and said, "And I think you should tell your family what you told them about Claire, because I'm going to if you don't." Dana's expression cycled through several things in quick succession. Claire watched it happen from across the table. The calculation behind the composure, the search for the version of this that could be managed. There wasn't one. "Dana," Richard said. His voice had changed. "What is he talking about?" What followed was the most honest conversation the Calloway family had ever had. It was not comfortable. Several things were said that could not be unsaid. Dana, pressed by her father and then her mother, and then the silence of a table full of people who were revising 6 years of assumptions in real time, told the truth. Not willingly, not completely at first, but in the fractured way truth comes out when there is no remaining alternative. The loans had been taken without authorization. The stories about Claire had been fabricated. The concern she had performed for years had been a mechanism to redirect attention and maintain trust she was using in ways her family did not know about. Richard's face went through something Claire had never seen before. Not anger. She had expected anger, something older and more complicated. The expression of a man understanding, all at once, how thoroughly he had been managed by someone he had trusted completely. Dana left before dessert was served. She did not say goodbye. Type karma in the comments, because that room was silent for a very long time after she left. The weeks that followed the April dinner were, by any measure, the most difficult the Calloway family had navigated. Richard and Patricia spent the first week in a kind of stunned recalibration, going back through years of decisions, conversations, and attitudes, and re-examining them in the light of what they now knew. It was painful work. Patricia cried several times. Richard became very quiet in the way of someone doing internal accounting that will take some time to complete. They called Claire on the Wednesday after the dinner. The call lasted an hour and a half. Her father spoke first. He said, "I owe you an apology that I don't know how to make large enough for what I got wrong." Claire had prepared for this conversation too, not with a list of grievances. She had moved past the need to recite them. She told her parents that what she needed was not a single apology, but a change in the default. The presumption of wariness replaced by the presumption of good faith. She told them she understood how Dana had done what she had done, that it had been gradual and credible, and that they had not been foolish to believe it. She also told them that understanding how it had happened did not make 6 years of its effects disappear. "I know," her father said. "I know that." Marcus and Dana separated 3 weeks after the dinner. The financial matter was referred to a family attorney. Richard had decided, after considerable discussion with Patricia, that pursuing it legally was less important than drawing a clear line about what was acceptable. A repayment arrangement was reached. It was not primarily about the money. It was about making the record accurate. Dana reached out to Claire once, 6 weeks after the dinner, a text message, 2 sentences. She said she was sorry. She said she knew sorry wasn't enough. Claire read it twice. She did not respond immediately. She thought about what a response would require. Not forgiveness, not closure, but honesty. And decided that honesty, in this case, was a conversation she was not ready for yet. She saved the message. She would decide what to do with it when she was ready. The Calloway family gatherings continued. They were different now, less polished, more careful, with the specific texture of people who have learned that smoothness is not the same as health. Claire came to them without the old dread. She sat at the table as herself, without the layer of performed acceptance she had maintained for 6 years. It was imperfect. It was real. Those two things she had learned were not the same as opposites. There is something worth saying about Marcus Chen, because his role in this story is easy to overlook. Marcus was not obligated to say anything. The financial irregularities were a matter he could have addressed privately within the marriage without ever bringing the Calloway family into it. The things Dana had said about Claire were not his to correct. They had happened before he was part of the family, and correcting them came with significant personal cost. He said something anyway, not because it was easy or because it served his interests, because it was true and because he had watched a person be quietly wronged for years and had decided at a birthday dinner over a store-bought cake with the wrong frosting that staying quiet was no longer something he was willing to do. Claire thinks about this often, about the specific courage it takes to say a true thing in a room full of people who have organized themselves around a different version of events, about the cost of that courage. Marcus lost his marriage, disrupted his extended family relationships, and set in motion a series of consequences he could not fully predict when he set down his fork and said, "I need to say something." He said it anyway. There's also something worth saying about the 6 years themselves, about what it does to a person to be quietly disbelieved by their own family, not dramatically, not with scenes and accusations, but in the slow accumulation of careful looks and managed conversations and the subtle withdrawal of the presumption of good faith. Claire had adapted to it in the way people adapt to persistent low-grade pain, by adjusting her expectations, by reducing what she asked for, by developing a kind of careful self-sufficiency that was functional and costly in equal measure. She had built a life that did not require her family to believe in her, because requiring it had stopped producing results. What the April dinner gave her was not the family she had wished for. It gave her something more durable, the accurate version, the one where she knew what had happened and why, where the confusion and the dread and the carefully managed family occasions all had an explanation that was true. The accurate version is harder to live with than the comfortable one. It requires something of everyone, but it is the only version on which anything real can be built. And real, as Claire Calloway has learned, is worth whatever it costs to get there. It is August now, 4 months after the April dinner. Claire drove to Phoenix last weekend for no particular reason. Not a birthday, not a holiday, just a Saturday. She brought Fig, who traveled in a carrier on the back seat and expressed his opinions about the drive at regular intervals. Her parents made lunch. Her father had been learning to cook since he retired, badly, enthusiastically, with a commitment to improvement that Claire found unexpectedly moving. The pasta was slightly overcooked. Nobody mentioned it. They sat on the back patio afterward, the three of them, in the specific afternoon light that Phoenix produces in August, too hot for most people and exactly right for those who grew up in it. Her father asked about her work. Her mother asked about the apartment. They listened to the answers in a way that felt different from before. Present rather than managed, curious rather than careful. It was ordinary. It was the kind of ordinary that Claire had stopped expecting and was learning, slowly, to receive. She drove back to Tucson in the early evening. Fig fell asleep in the carrier around the halfway point, which was an improvement over the drive up. Dana remains at a distance. The separation from Marcus became a divorce. The family account has been corrected. Where the relationship between Dana and the rest of the Calloway family will eventually land is a question none of them can yet answer. These things take the time they take, and rushing them produces performances rather than resolutions. Marcus sent Claire a message last month. He asked how she was doing. She told him she was well. She thanked him for what he had done at the dinner. He said he should have done it sooner. She told him, "You did it when you were ready. That's how these things work." He said, "I suppose it is." Claire Calloway is 34 years old. She is a physical therapist. She has a rescue cat named Fig and a small apartment she has made exactly her own, and a family that is learning, imperfectly and honestly, to see her clearly. It is not the family she grew up in. It is better than that. It is the one that finally told the truth. If this story found you somewhere you needed it, if you recognize something in Claire or in the 6 years, or in the specific relief of being believed after a long time of not being, leave a comment. Tell me where you are in your story. Subscribe for new stories every week. See you next time. All stories on this channel are fictional narratives created for entertainment and educational purposes. Any resemblance to real persons, companies, or events is coincidental. This content is intended to explore themes of family truth-telling, betrayal, and the courage to see clearly,